Morning, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order. Unfortunately, we've got regrets from Councillor Jones. He's been kidnapped up north by his fishing buddies and he won't be able to attend, but I'm sure he's here in spirit. The minutes from previous meeting, is there any errors or omissions? Mover and seconder for the minutes then, please. Marks. Ketchba, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French.
Yes.
Councillor Giguere.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yep.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Disclosure of beginner interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. Petitions and presentations. There's nothing, is there, Julie? Okay. Mover and seconder moving the committee of the whole. Martin. Giguere, all in favor?
Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French.
Yes.
Councillor Giguere.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. First report is the tree commissioner, Jeff. Are you there?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and the rest of Elgin County Council. The second quarter report has been provided. Just summarizing my activities from April 1st to June 30th for both the tree commissioner duty and the weed inspector duties. A total of 17 applications to harvest were submitted in that period of time. 8 from West Elgin, 1 from Dutton Dunwich, 2 from Southwold, 0 from Central Elgin, 5 from Malahide, and 1 from Bayham. The total volume for harvest, the total volume of wood was approximately 455,000 board feet in a harvest area of about 525 acres. Over that period of time, 1 application to clear a portion of woodlands within the county was received in the Malahide area for a total area to be cleared of 0.6 hectares. At the time that I wrote this report, it was still under the public consultation phase of review. That has ended just recently, so I'll be looking into the paperwork and issuing a permit for that, subject to meeting the no net loss policy of the county. 4 weed complaints were received in the second quarter. 2 of the complaints were for non-regulated weeds under the Weed Control Act. They weren't on the scheduled noxious weeds. 1 of the complaints resulted in the identification of a new giant hogweed site down in the Port Bruce area. Steps have already been undertaken to destroy the giant hogweed. The remaining complaint resulted in 2 adjacent landowners voluntarily destroying poison hemlock on their Malahide properties. For both the giant hogweed site and the poison hemlock site, the landowners are going to have to monitor for future regrowth and destroy as required. Both those plants, the seeds remain viable for a number of years after they're destroyed. As far as industry news goes, I thought that because of the discovery of that poison hemlock, I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about it, because hogweed and wild parsnip tend to get media attention because of their ability to burn skin if you get the sap on your skin and that skin is exposed to ultraviolet radiation from the sun. But poison hemlock is another one of those plants that deserved some attention as well. When I researched it, it's one of the more poisonous plants, definitely one of the more poisonous plants that is found in Ontario. Tends to prefer moist soils, but can grow in really disturbed conditions as well. It's a pretty tall plant, not that dissimilar from the more common wild carrot, but it does have hairless stems and purple blotches on the stem. So if any interested councillor members want to look up and do a little bit more research on it or see more pictures of it, I've provided a few websites that you can click on there, or definitely I can be approached and provide some pictures and that type of thing and just more information. So that's my report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Questions for Jeff on his report? Seeing none, mover and second, receive and file. McPhail. Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French,
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer,
Yes.
Counselor Ketchiba,
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Michelle, you've got the next report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, through you to members of council. Before you is a report on the visitor and resident absences during a pandemic policy. As council is well aware, visits to and absences from our long-term care homes across the province were suspended at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So a measured and cautious approach has been in place. And on August 28th of 2020, the Ministry of Long-Term Care makes changes to short stay absences. So those are the day outings, and to temporary absences or the overnight outings. And then on September 2nd, the ministry released a document called Resuming Visits in Long-Term Care Homes, which announced changes to visitor guidelines within our homes. Governed by Directive Number 3 for long-term care homes, which was issued by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, establishing requirements for visits to and absences from our homes. And additionally, there's a requirement under the Long-Term Care Home Act and Ontario regulation to ensure infection prevention and control best practices and procedures are in place to prevent infectious disease transmission with all care services, and that includes visiting and absences. So our 3 long-term care homes continue to work very closely with Southwestern Public Health to assess and to improve preparedness for responding to COVID-19. And that includes the development and implementation of policies and procedures, and also for the essential visitors, the general visitors, and the short stay or temporary absences as outlined in Directive 3. Additionally, we've been working closely with Western Public Health since the onset of pandemic to have discussions about items that are being dropped off to the homes. And so that might include food items, flowers, newspapers, clothing, photos. So getting direction and guidance from them on how the proper process and what type of items are acceptable to be dropped off and delivered for the residents. Draft policy was developed and that was attached for your reference. And the policy provides opportunities for visitors to attend the home and for residents to have access to absences from the home while working to support the safety of residents, visitors, and staff during the pandemic. Of course, the management team continues to monitor local activity and to assess risk daily to determine any changes that may be required in consultation with Western Public Health. Any changes to the policy would be communicated as soon as possible to families and residents. And I did work on a PowerPoint presentation, which was recorded last week and put on the website and social media for families and visitors just to prepare them for the changes with visits and with absences. So the recommendations before you are that the report be received and filed, and that council approve the draft policy and also policy 1.35, visitors and resident absences. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Michelle. Questions for Michelle on her report? Sally?
Yes, just one question, Michelle. With the rising numbers, et cetera, and the changes in the provincial private events, limitations of numbers, do you anticipate you may have to change your visiting things again back, or are you just are assuming we'll go on as is until we know any more?
So the current directive does allow, if there was an outbreak in the home, for one essential visitor, not general visitors, to still access the home. Having said that, our homes are taking a very cautious approach in assessing risk, and we've implemented additional measures. So the short answer to your question, Sally, is yes, we do anticipate there probably will be changes as we continue to see an escalation of cases, but we do really recognize the importance of the emotional well-being of the resident, which is attached to those visitors coming into our homes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? Being none, mover and seconder for the report, please.
Purcell.
Moved by Purcell, seconder. Martin, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchiba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Al, you're doing the next report?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you to the rest.
On March 29th, a hydro outage at the County of Elgin Administration Building eventually caused a loss of computing services, including internet access. The County of Elgin Administration Building, including the server room, is backed up from a hydro outage by an emergency generator. There is a very brief period of time between when the generator detects a power failure and the time it begins to supply power to the building. During that brief period of time, a UPS located in the server room provides power to servers and the communication equipment in the server room. During normal operations, the UPS monitors and conditions the power supply into the server room to ensure a consistent and even power supply. In the event that the emergency generator is incapable of providing electricity, the UPS provides approximately 55% of power. The UPS is configured to notify IT staff by email when the UPS starts to stop supplying power. In the case of an emergency generator failure, the cooling system would not be functional, in which case the server room would reach critically high temperatures well before the UPS batteries are drained. Once the temperature in the server room reaches 85 degrees, a high temperature alarm is triggered and engineering and IT staff are notified via phone call from the monitoring company. Servers are configured to automatically shut down when the internal server temperature reaches 107 degrees in order to safeguard them from damage due to excessive heat. The high on March 29th was unusual. When the emergency generator detected a power issue, it failed to start due to fluctuation of different phases of only one of three phases was supplying power to the building. The situation affected equipment differently. The server room detected that full power is not being supplied and therefore started supplying power to the server room equipment, excluding cooling units. The UPS sent an email alert to IT staff notifying them it was supplying battery power. However, because it was a Sunday, the email went unnoticed for a period of time. The system was somewhat functional, enough to keep the server room below 85 degree. The 85 degree trigger for longer than 55 minutes. Coincidentally, at the same time that the UPS was draining, the high temperature alarm in the server room was triggered and a phone call was made to engineering IT by RMB, alerting them of the situation. The engineering department was at the building attending to a fire alarm at the same time and responded to the temperature alert, after which time IT staff were alerted of the situation. The cooling system failures have happened in the past for various reasons. In response to a past cooling system failure, a second or backup cooling unit was installed in the server room. In the event that both cooling units fail due to a power failure and the issue is detected early enough, the server room can be kept below 107 degrees with the use of fans and open windows in the office adjoining the server room, but only for 55 minutes, after which time the UPS would be drained. Having a UPS with a longer battery run time to keep servers and communication equipment running while the source of the power failure is diagnosed and remedied would be beneficial. The impact to users was somewhat lessened because it was a Sunday afternoon. However, home staff were unable to access cloud-based charting and pharmacy systems, had to rely on their paper backup systems. Access to cloud-based applications on the internet was restored in about an hour, while full server access took another 2 hours to restore. Restoring servers that shut down improperly due to a loss of power is more time-consuming process than if they were properly shut down. The server UPS was installed in May of 2006. It has been serviced by the vendor every year and has had batteries replaced every 5 to 6 years as per vendor recommendation. The last battery replacement was in October of 2016, and the UPS is scheduled for replacement in 2021 as per the vendor's lifespan recommendations of 14 to 16 years. Following the March 29th outage, a review of the server room UPS was completed with the vendor. These were identified. They provided 2 budgetary quotes for UPS replacement. First, for a UPS that would provide 55 minutes of runtime for approximately $29,000. The second for a UPS that would provide almost 4 hours of runtime for approximately $39,000. The larger unit will not fit into the server room due to space constraints and would need to be located in the basement. There would be an additional cost of wiring the UPS into the basement at an estimated cost of $6,500 to $7,500, which was received from Tim Lovett. In order to improve the response to UPS alerts, IT staff has configured the UPS to send out text messages in addition to the email currently being sent out. As well, the engineering department has made improvements to the emergency generator to prevent fluctuations. The recommendations are that the incremental cost of $10,264 plus tax room UPS capable of providing 222 minutes of runtime be added to the IT capital budget in 2021, and that the cost of installing the electrical circuit required to locate the server room UPS in the admin building basement, estimated at from $6,500 to $7,500, be added to the 2021 administration building maintenance budget, and that the cost of $7,000 for regular battery every 5 to the IT capital budget starting in 2026. I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you all for that report. Questions for Al? Tom?
I'm just sitting here thinking, like this happened 6 months ago, so it's, this cannot be unique to Elgin County, you know. I think of Lambton County, I think of the city of St. Thomas, London, et cetera, et cetera. What do all these other businesses, places, they must have the same situation. What do they do? Is this unique just to us? I don't, you know, it's $40,000 fix here. I'm actually just wondering, we've got a new committee formed. I wonder, we've got a lot of expertise on that. I wonder if they would have a solution for us. I'm just looking for other ways. It's $40,000 fix. Is this the only solution? I'm just wondering.
Al? Go ahead, Al.
I want to point out that it's actually just a $10,000 addition. The funding to replace the current UPS was in the capital plan, is in the capital plan. So it's an additional $10,000 to add additional runtime to the UPS.
Okay, Tom?
Is this a unique situation to Elgin or to other businesses? What do they do?
If other businesses have server rooms, they would face the same challenges. As I mentioned in my report, this is a fairly unique situation. Hasn't happened before in my 17 years with the county. This particular situation where the generator experienced issues that we've not seen before. So we're responding to that situation by, it's all about for an additional $10,000, we're going to avoid the situation caused by this particular situation.
Any other questions for Al? Tom?
Not to do, were we having troubles with our generator? How often is it checked? Like, is that,
A lot.
I think I heard you say that we're safeguarding against a generator problem.
Ryan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, through Mr. Warden, through to Councillor Marks, generator is tested monthly and serviced biannually. For some unknown reason, there was a loss of power delivery associated with from the generator to a portion of the building, along with other electrical challenges within the building.
Any other questions for Al or Brian?
Just following up on that with Brian, Mr. Warden. So where do we stand now with the generator and its reliability? Is it something that, it's all fixed and there are no more problems, or do we have ongoing issues that we need to deal with our generator?
Through you, Mr. Warden, the issue associated with this event was driven by an inconsistent electrical service feed from Hydro One's network, whereby we were getting what we often refer to as dirty power or inconsistent power. And so the generator was unsure as to whether or not to kick in, and we weren't getting complete phases of power into the building. So since that point, Hydro One Network has certainly invested in its infrastructure out front of the county administration building. The generator is certainly has very few run hours on it. It is still considered relatively new. We engineering service staff believe that this unfortunately was a fluke event and led to this challenge.
So everything is good when it comes to our generator, and we're not going to be looking at any large capital costs with any necessary improvements.
That is correct. All other events whereby the generator was called upon have adequately supported electrical on-site servicing.
So it was a fluke, but we're going to spend $10,000 because of the fluke or because of just, we got a backup to a backup?
Al or Brian?
I'll defer to Al.
Yes, as I mentioned, it's part of risk management. I don't know, I could say this will never happen again, but if we've over the course of my time, we've had several situations, not a lot. It doesn't happen very often, but where cooling units would fail. That's the more likely scenario that we'd faced in the past, and it's critical that, especially for the homes, that we keep our servers and communication equipment going. We thought it might be prudent to spend the additional $10,000 to increase the uptime should the cooling unit or the generator fail.
Oh, Ed?
Yeah, thank you. Al, just to clarify, the UPS then did fail in the spring because you did have partial shutdown of the server and access from the homes. So I guess what my colleagues are trying to understand is there a larger issue at stake here? Because what you're proposing is extending the UPS time from 1 hour or 55 minutes to 4 hours. If you still have shutdown, what's the difference? Like, what difference does it make for that extra $10,000 investment? I guess that's what we want to clarify and make sure it's a worthy investment.
Certainly. The extra time, so instead of having to diagnose an issue in an hour, we now have 4 hours to diagnose it. That's what it comes down to. So in March, the UPS didn't fail. It ran out of power after 55 minutes. So
okay,
the fact we were able to resolve the problem within a couple of hours. Brian, I can't remember how long it took to resolve the problems, but less than 4 hours. So that's what we're asking for.
Any other questions or comments?
Just make a comment. I think it makes perfect sense to give them more time to diagnose the problem so that the UPS will carry it longer. To me, that makes a fair amount of sense, so.
Well, I see it as an insurance policy, so I'm certainly in favor of it. Any other questions or comments? Mover and seconder for Al's report, please. Martin? Seconder?
French.
French, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchiba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Annual report, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Before you is the 2000 annual report and the audited financial statements. The annual report communicates the state of the corporation to the residents, and it speaks to the achievements, the financial results, and the performance measures for the year. It also matches the results that you'll find in the financial information return, or more commonly known as the FIR, which is a provincially mandated reporting document. What the annual report does is it takes the rather complex nature of the FIR and puts it into an easier to understand format using a lot of visuals, such as charts, to help the residents understand the financial status of Elgin County. The audited financial statements that are included with this are consistent with the results that you see in the annual report. The auditor does state that the statements fairly present the financial position of the county. Speaking just briefly on the awards and achievements, there are too many to mention all of them, obviously, for this brief presentation. So I'll just hit a couple of the highlights. One is the redevelopment of the Terrace Lodge home. We're proceeding with a greener, more cost-effective, no-compromise solution for our residents. And we're looking forward to having that in place and fully completed by 2023. The other large project underway is the replacement for the bridge in Port Bruce. As well, we completed the Provincial Offences Administration building, which we began to operate this time last year. New policies were implemented, such as the community flag raising policy, and time was spent working on the internal capacity and bench strength of the organization to make sure that we're prepared for success in the future. Next, I'll take you through the various pie charts that we have in the report itself. If you take a look at page 49, you'll see the sources of revenue. Altogether, the county's revenue was just under $79 million, and we had expenses of just under $69 million for a net gain of $10 million. Looking at the revenue, the big components are requisitions from the municipalities as well as transfer payments. I think it's important to note that prior to 2012, over half of the county's revenue came from transfer payments. A change in provincial support has resulted in that dropping down to 39%, and now requisitions or taxation, local taxation, makes up 47%, a far greater amount than what we get in transfer payments. So a major change from what we had just a few number of years ago. Next, I'll look at the spending by cost element chart that you see on page 50. This explains the expenditures of the $69 million. And you'll see there that wages account for 42% of our expenditures. And in the wage category, long-term care makes up 68% of those wages. The next important category to note is contracted services and materials. Combined, they make up about 36% of the cost. And most of that money is spent, or over half of that is spent, in both ambulance and in our roads. Amortization makes up about 15% of the cost. And in that area, roads makes up the lion's share with 77% of that cost. Next, I'll move to the performance relative to the budget, and that's found on page 51. And you'll see an explanation of our of our performance. We had a budget of just under $8 million in net income, came in at just over 10 million. So we had favorable performance at 2.2 million. $700,000 of that performance was due to the efficiency funding that was received from the province, which will be put into reserve and used in 2020 and beyond to help us improve and modernize our operations. As well, the departments had performance, which accounted to about 0.9% of their budget. That added up to $600,000. Noteworthy in 2019 was that the public health unit returned prior year surpluses, providing $500,000 of performance. And then lastly, between supplemental taxes and interest earned, we had another $400,000 of favorable performance. Next, I'll go to the net spend by service category chart that's found on page 52. And here you see then where our tax dollars are effectively going to support. The largest single element of tax dollars goes to transportation, using up 30%. And then when you look at the various soft services, that includes homes, social services, library, ambulance, and public health. Those combined make up over half of our use of tax dollars. Moving on to the municipal position chart, which is found on page 53. You'll see that our municipal position is just under $220 million. And the bulk of our financial position sits in the category of roads and bridges. That makes up 61%. With buildings and land, there's a further 20%. And then the remaining major component in our financial position is our financial assets of just under $27 million. Next, I'll move to the table found on page 54, the plan to support current service levels. The purpose of this table is to take a look at by category, so roads versus bridges versus buildings, where we've invested money, and comparing it to what is required on a sustainable basis. You'll see here that it shows that we have a shortfall of just under $2 million required to versus what is required. However, keep in mind that council this year for the 2020 capital year added significant capital investment in order to address the shortfall. And so you'll see in the coming year a dramatic improvement where this will swing to the other direction in the following year's report. Lastly, on the municipal performance measures, that is found on page 55. The one item that I'd like to focus in on, again, is related to our investment in infrastructure. You'll see the adequacy of roads is sitting at approximately 50%. That is, again, related to the fact that back in the 90s, we had a significant underinvesting in our infrastructure. But as I said, with the major investment that council made over the last number of years, in particular, the added money put in 2020 by this council, that takes the investment in our roads from 14.9 million that was spent in 2010. By 2025, the annual contribution will be 17 million. So council has made made up that gap, and if we continue on this plan, we'll see our roads adequacy improving significantly. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jim. Question for Jim on his report?
Ed? Thank you, Mr. Warden. Jim, do you anticipate between you and Brian that you're going to see the annual maintenance cost per lane kilometer going up in the future?
Well, maintenance costs, I think, would be part of the discussion going on with our local municipal partners and might be best saved for a future discussion.
Cagey answer.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Julie.
Through you, Mr. Warden, just as follow-up to your question, Councillor Ketchba, I suspect there may be some findings through the service delivery review that might help guide that discussion as well. So in the coming months, I think we'll have a more definitive answer that is guided and directed by council.
Any other questions, comments for Jim? Seeing none, mover and seconder for the 2019 annual report. Ketchba, Jagger, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French.
Yes.
Councillor Jiguer.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Mooring bylaw, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, this is a simple housekeeping matter. When we did the submission to Infrastructure Ontario from the last meeting, their legal department wished that we had clerk added to the title for our CAO, as well as consistent use of the county's official legal name throughout the document. So we've made those adjustments in the attached bylaw. It's back for your approval.
Questions for Jim on this one? Mover and seconder for this, or the mooring bylaw, please. Jagger, Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French. Councillor Jiguer.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Brian, you're doing the next of the off-road vehicles?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, through to County Council. Effective January 1st, 2021 for municipalities listed in Regulation 803, all off-road vehicle types will automatically be permitted to use municipal roads unless a municipality passes a bylaw restricting or prohibiting their use. The list of municipalities provided in the regulation includes all of Elgin's local municipal partners with the exception of the town of Elmer and does not include the county of Elgin. Staff solicited comments from the Elgin OPP detachment, the county solicitor, and the county's insurer with respect to off-road vehicle use on county roads. All parties endorse the prohibition of off-road vehicle use on county roads based on their experience and professional fields of expertise. County Council has previously supported the prohibition of off-road vehicle use on county roads by resolution in 2004 and 2015. While we recognize that this topic of discussion may be contentious, staff is recommending, as also recommended by the county solicitor, that a bylaw should be enacted prohibiting off-road vehicle use on county roads out of an abundance of caution. The recommendations are before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian, and certainly I agree with you. The Township of Malahide, we've given permission for some of the ATV clubs to cross our roads, but certainly not to go willy-nilly on all the roads. So I agree with your position. So question for Brian?
Mr. Warden, it's Bob
ahead, Bob.
Purcell. Brian, when we do this bylaw, are we going to recognize the bylaws that are put in place by the individual and work with others? Plus, we still have to understand this does not affect any agricultural operation using those types of vehicles on the roads.
Through Mr. Warden, this would be a bylaw specifically associated with county roads as it relates to the operation of off-road vehicle. As it relates to local municipal partner bylaws that may say something different as it pertains to their roads, certainly the county's bylaw wouldn't have any effect in that regard.
Okay, Mr. Warden, would it be possible to at least understand what the county or what the individual municipalities are doing? Because there will be contradictions when you bring this in just as a blanket banning.
Already banned.
Brian?
I'm gonna, if I could maybe defer to the county solicitor to perhaps comment in that regard.
Steve?
Sure.
Just to repeat, it does apply to, the proposed bylaw would apply to the county roads. Wouldn't necessarily preclude any permissions granted by the local municipality on its roads. The jurisdiction over county roads is exclusive to the upper tier municipalities. So that doesn't preclude any more specific permissions granted regarding crossings and things like that. If it has to be, it would have to be a site-specific permission that would be granted. So if I could get some clarification from Councillor Purcell as to what type of local policy or permissions are you referring to?
Okay, the type of local situation would be where you are not simply crossing over a county road to get from one side to the other on a municipal road, but you have connecting places where you have to use a county road. An example, anyone moving a vehicle out of Dutton has to use a county road to get out of town to get to the roads that are permissible. And there are short little areas where roads don't line up. And we have recognized those in our bylaws, but we have stipulated that, you know, you can't use county roads except for those rare circumstances. So I'd just like to see the bylaws harmonized when we're doing it, that's all.
Well, we can certainly take that into consideration when we are drafting the bylaw itself. And I guess it would also depend upon the category of off-road vehicle you're referring to. Certainly this wouldn't, there are permissions that could be granted to implements of husbandry and things like that. I certainly can take that into account when drafting the bylaw, and the discussion can be completed at that time.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I'm asking.
Sally?
Yes, just Central Elgin prohibit off-road vehicles on our roads as well. We have given permission for one ATV group to use a section of one of the municipal roads. Obviously, the county has had a prohibition on the use of county roads all along, like that's never changed. So, and we as municipalities have no right to give permission to run on a county road. That's strictly the county's position. So I fully support that we stay without.
Right. The difference was that the last prohibition was a resolution and not necessarily a bylaw. So that's, we're taking it up one level because of the way that the province has worded its permission. You have to take it up to a bylaw stage as opposed to a resolution process.
Thanks for answering that, Steve, because basically nothing has changed for the last 10 years. So what we're doing is just giving a little more teeth. Okay. Duncan?
Okay, number of questions on this, and this goes back a lot farther than 10 years. Now, a number of things. We've had this resolution in place for a number of years. The province has decided to change it and put the total responsibility back on the municipalities to decide whether they want them on our roads or not on our roads, and that's all fair. My concern about it is that, okay, we're going to put a bylaw in place, and as a county councillor, like many of us sitting around the room here, we have this bylaw in our hand, and someone calls up and said there's somebody riding on county road. Who do I call? Call the OPP. They're not going to care. Do I call the Elgin County bylaw people? Oh, they don't exist. So it's kind of like us putting a bylaw in place to prohibit mosquitoes. They're irritating to some people. They're out there, but what's the plan on how are we going to enforce this bylaw? I don't see it because people are using our roads now, even though we say they're not supposed to be. What's going to change if we have an official piece of paper in our hand that says, oh, you can't ride on that road? I don't know who's going to chase it down. Is it going to be West Elgin's bylaw officer? I don't think so. So we've been looking at it in West Elgin. And I see that it says that our insurance company recommends that we do not do it. We asked our insurer regarding this issue, and I spoke with my clerk this morning just to verify the fact that the email trail that we got back from our insurer is that we're in the road business. Whether you allow somebody to use it or you don't allow somebody to use it, you're still liable, whether you make a bylaw up one way or another. So I'm just kind of wondering whether we're accomplishing anything with this discussion. I would be much happier if we were to be having the discussion here that we send a recommendation to our Elgin Police Services group that they seriously consider getting a ATV enforcement unit to look after some of the infractions that we have already got, because I was plagued with people coming from all over the place to Rodney and West Lauren and riding on the Integris trails down there. The only way that we were able to rectify that situation is in conversation with Brad Fishley. He was able to borrow an ATV unit from another jurisdiction and come down, and because of the fact that they had equipment to go out where the ATVers were, and this was a simple trespass issue, not a road issue, they were able to clean it all up, and things are back in pretty good stead now. But you know, if you're going to make bylaws, again, this is one that I don't think that anybody has paid much attention to in the past, and I really don't think they're going to pay much attention to it in the future unless we can figure out some way of enforcing this bylaw. So as it sits right now, I'm kind of scratching my head as maybe we can start a little list of rules that we've got in Elgin County that people pay absolutely no attention to. And number one is the 80-kilometer-an-hour speed limit, and the other one is this ATV bylaw. So what we're trying to accomplish here, maybe Steve can, give me some comfort that because we have some kind of people that we are a piece of paper, we're absolved from liability or the potential of being sued or something like that. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that we're in the road business, and whether it's a ATV, whether it's a bicycle, whether it's a pedestrian, if something goes wrong, we're going to be named in it.
Steve?
Well, I'll give you the short answer. It's going to be a bit repetitious. What has prompted this is a change in the provincial law. Provincial law is saying unless there is an indication to the contrary, these vehicles will be permitted on your roads. So while there is some indication of some question of whether or not that might necessarily apply to county roads, out of abundance of caution, we create the bylaw to make it very clear that that it is not permitted. So that's the first thing, is that why are we creating it? It's to address the extended permission that's being granted by the province. As has already been indicated, this is not a change in the approach or the attitude that has been adopted for many years. And I agree, it's not just 10 years. The other issue is that there are provincial regulations and legislation that that creates provincial offenses, which I can tell you from prosecutorial experience were in fact enforced by the police. So
Just to stop you, that's insurance and other things that go along with it. You're not.
we'll get to the insurance, but that was just, there were regulations prohibiting
Right.
the operation on certain roads. And the police, I can tell you from prosecution experience, were in fact enforcing those laws, and you'd see Part 1 offenses in provincial offenses court for violations. We now have the permission being extended. That's where you may get some reduction in those charges from the police, because it's no longer a provincial offense. Under provincial legislation, it's still a provincial offenses matter. Certainly the Ontario Provincial Police are still allowed to and have the jurisdiction to lay charges in relation to bylaw offenses. And no doubt when we pass this bylaw, we're going to get set fines and short form wordings that would allow those types of, or which would facilitate tickets. Very often you're going to get a Part 3 summons on an off-road vehicle. The declaration that it is illegal essentially to operate off-road vehicles on county roads will be relevant, in my opinion, to insurance matters. I get it that we're responsible for that it's our roads, we're in the roads business, but there are certain rules and regulations and realities that courts will have to take into account. Certainly every owner operator of an off-road vehicle is deemed to know the laws of the province of Ontario, including any municipal bylaws. So it will, as far as I'm concerned, and as you know, I started my career in defense insurance work, that it will be a relevant consideration in claims. It may be a relevant consideration as courts try to do the do-around that would allow for awards of damages, but it will be a relevant consideration. And when I say about an abundance of caution, I think that the municipal interest will in fact be served through the enactment of the bylaw, regardless of the absence of an enforcement officer or team that would necessarily be charged with just that enforcement responsibility. So I think while I understand the concern about enacting a bylaw that will not be enforced, what's motivating this is the change in the provincial law, which specifically includes, in the absence of a bylaw to the contrary. So I understand what you're saying on this one. I think the abundance of caution and the doing what you can to protect the municipal interest certainly outweighs the concern of enactment of a bylaw that is not necessarily actively enforced by the municipality. It can be enforced by the police. Certainly in our pandemic situation we have right now, enforcement officers or any local municipality could in fact lay a charge under even our municipal bylaw.
Question on that. Now, if the police lay a charge, is it the bylaw that they're laying the charge on, or is it under the Highway Traffic Act of another infraction, or a trespass, or no insurance, or no license plate, or underage driver, or is it the county bylaw that they're gonna be laying the charge under?
Well, that's up to the police to choose which charge.
Okay.
Sometimes a provincial statute begins as the charge and it ends up as a bylaw charge.
So we can get at West Elgin, we can get the police to enforce our bylaws?
They have the jurisdiction to do it.
God, that's nice to know. I'll be sending them after chickens.
Just to add to that, Steve, certainly we've had complaints in the past from individuals about kids running up and down the roads. Informed the OPP and they got after the kids and they didn't rip up the roads anymore. So it usually a warning at the first time. If they repeated it, they were going to get fined.
Well, they usually be underage with no license.
Yeah.
Well, with these types of charges, you often see multiple charges being laid. And if it is something that there's been a prior warning, you will get a licensing charge, you'll get a helmet charge, you'll get the illegal operation, and one other tool will be, if a bylaw is enacted, a bylaw charge. It is, and I can tell you again, from a prosecutorial perspective, that it is another tool available to a prosecutor. So when provincial charges come forward, it's a first charge. You might be convinced that a bylaw charge is a reasonable resolution of that of that charge. So I don't want to give any secrets away with respect to prosecution, but that's that. Although it may not start, and that's what I was saying, although it may not start as the charge, it may end up as the conviction.
Sally, you had a question?
I was just going to comment on, I was consulting and we can certainly bring to the Police Services Board Duncan's request about, an off-road, that they have an off-road unit. We were asking them right now with the new provincial mandate about private gatherings and being 10 or less indoors. And how is that going to be, monitored, and where do complaints go? Because we've already received a whole lot of complaints Monday morning, our Central Elgin staff, and they wanted to know, are we supposed to monitor it? Who? And when I talked to Mr. Butler, Mike Butler, the acting department staff sergeant, when I spoke with him, he said that they would definitely enforce it. That's their job. They can. They would hope the bylaw would enforce it from 8:30 to 4:30 or normal working hours, and they would do after hours. But they said it wouldn't be the highest priority, obviously, because they have major things. The other thing, Duncan, if you're going to call them for everything, you can join Central Elgin paying more of the budget for the policing, because it depends on how many calls you have. And we get an awful lot of them in Port Stanley, which certainly increases why we pay so much of the budget.
We don't have the bylaw capacity. And again, I get very uncomfortable in the situation where, I'm asked about, well, you've got a bylaw, who do I call? And I'm going, well, we've been just telling people to call the non-emergency number at the OPP. And 3 days later, you might get a police officer drives around, and when somebody's on an ATV, well, it's a hot button right now. So, as long as we're prepared to stand there and go, okay, yeah, well, maybe somebody someday will come and have a look, but chances of actually catching a perpetrator are very, very small, and the OPP are not going to, with a cruiser, get into any kind of enforcement, because that's not where the ATVs are. And I have never had that many complaints about people on the road. I get complaints about trespass of people out in fields, but I see them go by my place all the time. I don't have one, no intention of getting an ATV. But they're there. They've been there for 20 some odd years, or more, 25 years. And if it's a situation where this bylaw is, now that the province has come to the conclusion that these vehicles can be on the road, whether this bylaw is going to help us out or not, I don't know. I see in Chatham, Kent, they have allowed ATVs on their roads. I don't know what the situation is in Middlesex, whether they have allowed any there. I really question where we're going with this, but I understand Steve's perspective of trying to limit the municipality's exposure to liability, and hopefully, maybe this is something that will help. But
Any other questions for Brian?
It's Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
Just want to direct this at Steve more than anything. If we pass this bylaw, we eliminate the provincial legislation that allows these vehicles anywhere on roads in Ontario. It also has lots of comprehensive conditions in it about age, about helmets, about insurance, about driver's license, et cetera, et cetera. You wipe all that out if you say you can't be on the roads, and we're back to a bylaw that says you can't be on the road. That's why I'm asking that they discuss it with municipalities that already have some mechanisms to control that. From an insurance perspective, it's a lot better if it's controlled than it is just trying to outright ban it and wipe out legislation that has considered all the insurance exposures like underage drivers, et cetera, et cetera. So I would prefer that this be deferred until proper investigation can be done along those lines. An example is our municipality and Central Elgin both have agreements where a very small group of people with proper insurance and proper routes are allowed to get from point A to point B using roads under careful conditions. Those types of things make it better for the insurance companies. They also make it better for the citizens. As Doug has pointed out, the biggest problems are trespass, and that our way, it was always the railroad property where people could go from Fort Erie to Windsor, basically. And they just took it upon themselves to view that as a all-terrain vehicle route. And they started abusing it to a great degree, and that's been cleaned up through active police enforcement. So this might be one that we could defer for a little while. And that legislation about being allowed on roads, that goes way, way back. All they've done now is add a bunch more types of vehicles that can go on the roads. They were always allowing them on the roads.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Steve, do you see any merit in deferring this to contact the local or lower tier municipalities?
Well, we can certainly do that. We just have a time limit on when the enactment of the bylaw as it relates to, because the permission commences January 1st.
Okay, but we do have a month.
We have a few months, yeah.
Okay, all right then. Any other questions for Brian? There's been a suggestion that we defer this until we contact our local municipalities to make sure we get it right. Julie?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I would just maybe add that should council wish to ask for additional information from the Elgin Group Police Services Board, that be directed at this time as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And again, and as we've done our consultation, being a large agricultural community, I didn't read anywhere in the report where, OFA or any of those organizations were contacted to see what their feelings were on it. I don't know, Ed, if you know where the OFA stands on it.
Not offhand. I would have to investigate that.
And I just think that's a group that, on a lot of these situations that affect, the rural section, that those people certainly should be at least consulted.
Dominic?
Mr. Warden, yeah, as part of the next report, I'm interested in hearing about the alternatives. So I'm hearing that other counties are taking more of a management and control approach, which to me comes across more collaborative. Let's work together. It's not just about municipal interests, it's about everybody's interests and safety. So I'd like to compare at least two options. We can do a bylaw, or we can do, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but I'd like to hear more about our options.
Okay, well, that's why we're going to defer it, so we have lots of opportunity to talk to everyone. Certainly our local ATV club, they're very responsible. In fact, they're the ones would like to get the kids off the road. They're the ones that are on the trails and would like to keep on the trails and not use the roads. And so they're very responsible, but I think it's probably appropriate to contact them just to get their point of view. Okay, so we need a motion to defer. Purcell?
Yes, Purcell.
And McPhail, all in favor?
Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French.
Yes.
Councillor Jiguer.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
Here, the motion is carried.
Thank you. COVID-19 body holding services. Jeff, are you doing that? Julie? Julie?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to members of council. This report details one effort to improve our region's capacity to respond to both the pandemic and other crisis situations that might involve mass mortality. St. Joseph's Healthcare, London Health Sciences Centre, and the City of London have partnered to create a 5-transport truck fleet that is capable of handling 250 bodies. They're refrigerated trucks, 3 of which are diesel, 2 are electric. And with a contribution of $5,000 towards the $30,000 annual operating expenses associated with this fleet, the county could have access to the fleet if needed. It is important to note that there were few details available to support any sort of agreement with the City of London at this time. So that's why there may be some information missing from the report. That said, the city is seeking some indication from Elgin County as to whether we are interested in or not in contributing to the ongoing operating expenses. So this plan is, they intend to incorporate some other municipalities in this as well, and I'm not sure how they've made out with City of St. Thomas or other neighboring municipalities. However, locally, body holding services does not seem to be a significant issue in Elgin. And St. Thomas Elgin General Hospital has put in place an expedited death response, which is in accordance and structured by the Ministry of Health. As well, our CEMC has discussed this with local funeral homes, and we are aware that they are working with the chief coroner in order to develop some guidelines for the safe preparation of COVID positive deaths in our area. And St. Thomas and Elgin, as you know, have a number of local trucking firms who may be able to offer a more advantageous arrangement with a guaranteed quick service. That is my concern, that should there be some sort of mass casualty or COVID-related death situation, I suspect that priority would be given to the area where the volume is the greatest. And that is unlikely to be Elgin because of our population and density. So it is recommended that staff pursue a local option and provide an update with some anticipated costs at a future meeting if local case counts continue to rise and this continues to be a topic at our regional tables. So that is the recommendation before you, and Jeff and I would be happy to answer any questions about any of the conversations that we've had with partner agencies with respect to body holding and capacity. And the City of London has requested that we notify them of council's position either way by September the 30th. with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And I agree with your suggestion, Julie, that we try to find a local option. Hopefully, we never have to be in this position, but I do remember in March and April when Italy got hit and they were getting 400 and 500 deaths a day, and they just simply couldn't handle it. And they were using basically refrigerated trucks to get them through. So I think we need to examine this just to be prepared, because the second wave is coming and we don't know what that's going to look like, but we need to be prepared. So questions for either Julie or Jeff? Ed?
No question, Mr. Warden, but I tend to agree. I think a made in Elgin solution, should the need arise, would be more appropriate this time.
Okay, thank you. See nods, mover and seconder for the recommendation. Martin, Ketchba?
Sure.
All in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell. Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French.
Yes.
Councillor Jiguer.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you.
Just like to change it up a little. You're paying
Move on to correspondence. There's two items on correspondence. Anyone wish to make a comment on either the SWIFT or the Community School Alliance? Basically FYI. Mover and second to receive and file. Marks? Jiguer, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Councillor Purcell.
Yes.
Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor French. Councillor Jiguer.
Yes.
Councillor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Other business, statement inquiries by members. Notice of motion. Did you have something, Sally?
Yes, I just wanted, I'm sorry, I missed the point there. I just wanted to declare that I intend to run for warden for the coming year.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Matters of urgency. We'll move on. We have quite a large closed item on the agenda, closed meeting agenda. So I need a mover and I'll give you the background first of all. Number one, Director of Engineering Services, Municipal Act, Section 239-2K, position, plan, procedure, criteria, and instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality or local board, enabling accessibility fund agreement. Number two, Director of Engineering Services and County Solicitor, Municipal Act, Section 239-2C, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. F, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege and communication necessary for that purpose. Improvements at Centennial and Elm. Number three, County Solicitor. Municipal Act, Section 239-2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board. Advice that is given to solicitor client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. Reforestation order. Number four, Chief Administrative Officer and Community Emergency Management Coordinator. Municipal Act, Section 239-2K, position, plan, procedure, criteria, instruction be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality or local board, community emergency management support for the municipality of West Elgin. Number five, Chief Administrative Officer. Municipal Act, Section 239-2B, personal matter about an identified individual, including municipal act or local board, employee, labor relations or employee negotiations, long-term care, staff testing option. Number six, Chief Administrative Officer, Municipal Act, Section 239-2B, personnel matter about an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees, labor relation or employee negotiation, service delivery review. So after all that, any mover and second to move into close. Marks, Ketchabah, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Okay, we'll have a brief intermission and then it'll allow us to get ready for close and allow everyone for a break and maybe a coffee. So we'll be back in.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Closed session, Julie, report.
For in-camera item number 1, be it resolved that staff proceed as directed.
Mover and seconder. Marks, McPhail, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Number 2,
In-camera item number 2, be it resolved that staff proceed as directed.
mover and seconder. Martin. Jagger, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Item number 3,
Be it resolved that the verbal report from the county solicitor be received and that staff proceed as directed.
mover and seconder. Ketchabah. Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
0, the motion is carried.
number 4,
For in-camera item number 4, be it resolved that the report from the CAO and CEMC be received and filed for information, and that staff be directed to develop an agreement to be executed by the County of Elgin, Municipality of West Elgin, and Township of Southold, effective for a 1-year period to support CEMC for those municipal partners commencing October 1st, 2020, and that the Warden and Chief Administrative Officer be directed to sign the agreement.
mover and seconder. McPhail. Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
number 5,
Be it resolved that the verbal report from the CAO be received.
mover and seconder. Martin and Jagger, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. And finally, number 6,
Be it resolved that the report from the CAO be received and that staff proceed as directed.
mover and seconder.
Purcell.
And Brazil,
Yes.
all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Motion to adopt recommendation for committee of the whole, mover and seconder. Marks and McPhail, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Bylaws,
Be it a first, second, and third read of bylaw 2047, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1941, procedural bylaw, and to repeal bylaw 2013.
mover and seconder. Martin. Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes,
8-0, the motion is carried.
bylaw,
Be it a first, second, and third read of bylaw 2048, being a bylaw to amend and restate bylaw 2044, to approve the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, OILC, for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the corporation of the County of Elgin, and to authorize the entering into of a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC.
Mover and seconder. Don't be shy. Martin, Marks, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried. The first, second, and third read of bylaw 2049, being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of the municipal council of the corporation of the County of Elgin at the September 22nd, 2020 meeting.
Mover and seconder. McPhail. Ketchba, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. No more bylaws? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Marks. Again, all in favor?
Deputy Warden McPhail.
Yes.
Counselor Purcell.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Marks.
Yes.
Counselor French.
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer.
Yes.
Counselor Ketchba.
Yes.
Mr. Warden.
Yes.
8-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Before we move into our next meeting, I know that Caroline's brought some cookies to get us through till past our lunchtime. So if anybody wants to grab a cookie